Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. I'm Laura Shrell. I'm a high-performance women's health coach and the founder of Balance Bombshells. And today we're getting raw, we're getting vulnerable, and we're going to get super uncomfortable, at least on my part, as I open up and share my story of having a miscarriage. So I have my tissues right here because I honestly was not emotionally or physically prepared for what the experience is going to be like. And I shared on my Instagram the other day, and I can link that below if you want to read that, about being open, about talking about it. And what I received back was so much love, so much support from other women who either understood what this was all about, who had gone through it, sharing stories of successful pregnancies after having a miscarriage. Just so beautiful. Sorry, I'm getting emotional just thinking of all of you and the love and support that you give to someone that you might have met online or barely know. But for me, it has meant so much. This is why we brought the tissues today. But what was abundantly clear was that we are craving more of these conversations. And, if this is not something you want to hear, you don't have to listen to this video. This is for the women who want to understand what a miscarriage is like, how I've been kind of dealing with it emotionally, physically, how it all came about, what option we chose in terms of having a miscarriage, and just how it all kind of came about. So today I'm just sharing that story with you. It's for my own personal healing for sure, but I think something that hopefully you can benefit as well. Maybe you're like, hey, I haven't gone down that route yet, but it's a fear of mine for the future. I hope this brings you some love and support. Or if you've gone through this and you're like, I just appreciate listening to someone else who's gone through what I've gone through and just knowing you're not alone. And just being okay and comfortable to talk about something that I know a lot of women feel shame about, a lot of guilt, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt. I've gone through all the emotions in the past few weeks. But the tears now are certainly of disappointment and sadness and grief, but also so much love and support and understanding from people all over the world, I guess. So yeah, today's going to be super emotional. But we're going to get into it because I felt like this was very needed in our society, very needed in our community. And we can just continue to lift one another up and be that level of support that we need on our journey. And right now, I just hope that this story brings peace with you. I'm going to be doing some other videos that I'll also link below, answering your questions about fertility and miscarriage, sharing my fertility journey so far, because there's certainly a lot to talk about that I want to give you what you need in certain chunks so you can kind of dive into those as well as it fits with where you are in your journey and what you want to know and what you're comfortable welcoming into your life. I do know that this is a heavy topic. I was really hesitant on sharing it. It's taken me about 2 months to get to that point. I was recognizing I wasn't showing up fully, from my relationships across the board, and distancing myself from certain friends and people, and it didn't feel good. So I really wanted to open up and be vulnerable and share what this experience has been like, how I'm emotionally dealing, and really using the time to strengthen my mindset and just really come to a place of love and authenticity and really be genuine in sharing the real deal behind the scenes. So that I talk to women all the time about women's health. I help women with their cycles. I help women naturally balance their hormones, and part of that is certainly boosting our fertility. And I do this all by helping women understand what their goals are and understanding how we can be using your food, your fitness, certain supplements, certain herbs to your advantage to reach your goals. And depending on where you are in your life and depending on what your goals are, your habits are going to change. Your food's going to change. Your exercise might change. Your daily life might change. Our bodies have to be very strategic on what we want. And so that is what I had to do too, as I was figuring out, hey, my next goal is to become pregnant and have children and start our family. So my husband and I got married on May 3rd, 2019. And we actually started trying right away when we got married. You are now watching this almost a year later, but I'll be getting more into our fertility journey and just how it's kind of come about. But right now I do want to share just the miscarriage part. So we got pregnant, we found out we were pregnant on December 24th, 2019, which is on Christmas Eve, which was so exciting. Felt like such a blessing. We actually took another test on Christmas Day just to, be able to confirm that. Like, obviously, I don't think those tests are a fluke, but we just thought it was such a great way to kind of like spend our first Christmas together. So it was such this beautiful, beautiful high. We were so excited. And then, I actually went to a few ultrasound appointments. I got it confirmed about like 4 weeks later. And then they had me go back in 2 weeks after that to confirm the heartbeat. So we got a confirmed heartbeat at 6.5 weeks. And then we had an appointment on our 9th week. And Tyler actually came, Tyler's my husband, came with me to the doctor to actually see the baby for the first time. So you can imagine our disappointment when the doctor, we actually met with the midwife, was, just chatting with us, talking about my symptoms, talking about all the things, and my body was not showing any signs of miscarriage or anything. I did feel nauseous throughout most of the pregnancy. It started for about 2 hours in the morning, and then it would go on for about 4 hours, and then it turned into like an all-day thing. And by 7.5 weeks, I actually stopped feeling nauseous, which was also what they were able to confirm, that the baby's heart stopped at about 7.5 weeks. So it's kind of interesting how that kind of came together. I truly believe in the science of our bodies and really tuning in and paying attention to the signs that our body gives us. So that to me made a lot of sense. I actually thought I was doing better. I thought I'd hacked the whole morning sickness thing, but in reality, we had essentially lost the baby. So that was really hard to hear. So that was at 9 weeks, and my body had been carrying the baby for 1.5 weeks without showing any signs of basically letting it go. So in my mind, I just kept thinking my body so wants to be pregnant and so wants to have children that it was not going to let this one go. So it was really hard. I dealt with it, like once she said, guys, I'm so sorry, this is what you'd hate to hear, but there's no longer a heartbeat. She's like, it's clear that the baby has not grown past 7.5 weeks. This is not the size that we are expecting at this time along in your pregnancy. And I used to plan a lot of events, and I've had pretty stressful experiences happen in my family life, especially when I was younger, that I've just learned how to, in the moment, not fully react. I am very calm, cool, and collected in times of high stress, which certainly helped me when I was planning events and there's a lot going on. Even when my husband, I could feel, I'm lying on the table and he's behind me in a chair, and I could feel his arm reach out and squeeze my shoulder, and I turned around and I could just see tears in his eyes of listening to the woman. And in my mind, I was, in crisis recovery mode. Like, okay, you're going to be fine. You're going to get through this. Like, you were, really talking positively without really setting in the reality of what had just happened and what I was hearing. So in the moment, I feel like I dealt with it strong, did it the best that I could through that. So then Tyler dropped me back off at home because he was going to work, and I ended up calling my mom. And that's when, even just saying the words out loud and telling somebody new, cued the waterworks and basically allowed me to have that emotional breakdown, which I think needs to happen. Like, you're not just pregnant all of a sudden and then to hear that you have to have a miscarriage, basically. I was not mentally or emotionally prepared on how to handle that. So what happened afterwards was we were recommended to a different OBGYN who specializes in miscarriage. So you don't go and see these doctors unless you basically are having miscarriage. So we went 2 days later to a different doctor, and as we were sitting in the waiting room, another young couple comes in and sits next to us, and I just remember wanting to smile at them to let them know, like, I feel you, like, we're clearly in the same situation. But I ended up averting my gaze because I didn't want to be intrusive on their private time as well and what they were going through. So it just was kind of interesting of how much you want to connect with someone, but how much you're trying to be respectful of their pain without knowing how to bring that together. So it was interesting. You're not expecting that when you're sitting in a waiting room. So from there, we went into the doctor's office and they started talking to us about our options. So when you're going through a miscarriage, and like I didn't really know this, like I don't have too many friends who've actually had miscarriages, and those that have, they haven't really opened up. You know, you can just kind of tell where it's a topic that you don't know how to respond to, you don't know what to talk about. And I could find in my journey, I did want to talk about it and I did want to share, and I can just kind of tell that friends weren't as open to it. They didn't know how to respond. They were just kind of like some pain expression of like, okay. So I understand this is a topic that not many people are comfortable sharing and talking about, but I really want to help whoever needs this information, because I think it would have helped me if I had known. And I'm going to get into the real deal of what goes on. So you can certainly pause and exit out of this video anytime you want. I totally understand. And it's really meant for the women who want this information. So we've learned that there are 3 steps in terms of getting a miscarriage and inducing it, or whatever, getting rid of an unviable pregnancy, basically. So the first one is to wait it out, which they said that it can take about up to 10 weeks. And the fact that my body wasn't really showcasing signs of getting rid of the baby, I knew like we might be on the longer end of that. And like, to me, it didn't really feel good to hang on to something that I wasn't necessarily supposed to be. The second one is to take medication that will help you pass the baby at home, which, you know, would be the more painful option. The third option was doing a DNC, which is where they surgically go and remove the baby and basically like scrape the lining of your uterus to get rid of all the tissue. So I actually thought I was going to do the DNC route, because I was like, oh, the procedure's over in 15 minutes. They knock you out, you go home, you know, cool. But then they started talking about the severity of having a DNC, and they were talking about how it does introduce a foreign object to the uterus, which caused me alarm. And then I have had progesterone issues in the past, and so they started talking about how the doctor would scrape the lining of your uterus, and the doctor said if you go with that route based on, you know, your progesterone stuff from a few years ago, we'd recommend not trying again for at least 3 months. And that, to me, like my heart literally broke. I was like, I don't want to wait like another 3 months. I don't know how long my body would take to get rid of this pregnancy, so option 2 seemed more of the option that we would go with. The kicker was when they talked about how the surgeon, although they're really careful, could potentially scrape too much of the lining and damage the lining. So I was like, that seems terrible and not something that I wanted to go through, especially when they were talking about, you know, all of the things that could potentially go wrong. So we chose the option to take the medication and have the miscarriage induced and go home. And this was where I was not fully prepared of what that meant. Like, they sugarcoated it for sure and did not really get into it. They mentioned that I would have some cramping. I would need to come back to be able to make sure that all the tissue had passed, to make sure that the baby had passed. So basically what happens is I had to take medication, 1 dose of medication right there in the office before I went home. And that basically was medication, and they had to like see me take it. I forget the reason why, but they needed to like legally see me take it. And then they send you home with some other medication to take 24 hours later. So the first medication is one that basically stops your pregnancy hormone. So it basically tells your body, I'm no longer pregnant. So they like signals and kind of shuts off that cue. So I took that, and then we went home, and then they said within like 24 hours, take this next dose. And so they gave me that medication, and then they sent me to the pharmacy where I got a pharmaceutical grade Motrin, which is a higher dose of Motrin that you would find in the CVS or pharmacy or whatever. And then they gave me some narcotics for the pain. And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, I have an understanding of what this might feel like. I've had labor-like contraction menstrual cramps, so I was like very well aware this is going to be painful. I know what this feels like, but I didn't really understand the full severity of what it was going to be like. And I guess that's probably for the best, but at the same time, I wish I had known the situation and what could really happen. So then within 24 hours, Tyler, was so like helpful and just watching me. He ended up going to work, and he's like, I'm by my phone, text me if anything happens. I can be home in 20 minutes. Like, bless his heart. And then, so I took the second dose at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday. And that is one where it's like 4 tablets and you actually have to insert them up into your cervix. So they said, okay, make sure you insert them into your cervix, do it at 3 p.m. and then make sure you lie down for 30 minutes to make sure that the medication absorbs into your tissue, where I guess they've had cases before where women didn't do that. And then like within like 15 minutes, they go to the bathroom and they end up like peeing them out. Basically it comes out and then like it doesn't really work. And you have to go back and get more medication. So like, I'm going to follow their rules. So I'm really glad that they told me that. So lie down, and they said, basically, once you take that medication within 2 to 24 hours, you can expect to pass the pregnancy or the baby, however we want to think about it. So my husband came home around 6. Yeah, around 6. I'm like trying to get the timeline right. And then by 6:30, I noticed that I was not hungry. I had to basically force myself to eat dinner because the medication they'd give me, especially the pain medicine, I didn't take too much of it until after that second dose on the second day. But I noticed I had no appetite. I definitely had to force myself to eat something because the medication had to be taken with food. And then it was the second dose of the medication from the pain medicines was one where you don't want to be driving. So clearly it's like I'm staying in and I'm hanging out. So I did notice that my legs were a bit woozy when I would walk around. So I was like, okay, just sitting on the couch right now feels great. And so by 6:30, we had settled down to watch a movie because we're like, we don't really know what else to do. We don't know when this is going to happen. And I had started to feel like some cramping in my stomach. And then things came on hard and fast. It's like, you know, when you watch the movies, you watch these women who go into labor and like there's a gradual buildup as your body's going through contractions. And basically when you're induced in labor, the contractions come on full force and then it just kicks you into labor basically. And so this was what I was not expecting, was that basically induced my body into labor to pass this 7.5 week size fetus out. So what happened was it went from 0 to 60 very quickly, and I was having contractions immediately by about 6:30. So it was about a 3.5 hour kick in from that second dose of medicine. So by that point, I'd made sure to take some pain medicine. I knew it was coming, but this was just not what I was expecting. So I actually had Tyler time it, and I was having contractions that lasted for 10 to 15 minutes, and it would break for about a minute, and that went on for 90 minutes. Like 90 minutes, guys, of like going from I have no idea what's going on to basically being in contraction mode for 10 to 15 minutes. And I don't know how well those pain medicines worked because it was a full-blown pain mode. Like it was very painful. It felt like a natural childbirth basically. So what I noticed at the end of the 90 minutes, I had this strong urge to push. So I actually got up and went to the bathroom 3 times, and my body passed, I think what was the baby, a lot of tissue, a lot of fluid. So that happened within 90 minutes. And then I felt calmer. I felt emotionally like cleansed at that point. And I just felt like, okay, I'm like basically taking a break right now. So that was the first like 2 hours. And then after 30 minutes of having a break, I started having contractions again. And that happened for about 5 minutes at a time. And then I'd have a few minutes off. So they were less severe, but obviously like still painful. It's not the best, guys. So that went on for about 2 hours. And then I did have to get up frequently to go to the bathroom and pass more fluid and tissue. So what I'm thinking was that was more of the placenta that had been forming. That was a lot of the tissue buildup that had been going on in the uterine wall. So when we have our period, we shed the lining of our uterus. And basically when you have a baby, not only do you pass the baby, you pass the placenta. And then afterwards, you're going to be bleeding for quite a bit because you're also shedding that lining. So being induced, it was kickstarting my body into basically shedding all of that tissue and all of that buildup of blood and hormones and excess fluid. So I definitely had a lot more water retention going on during those weeks of being pregnant. So what also happened here was like I was having contractions, but I was also having like a lot of fever symptoms. So I was going between being really, really hot and being really, really cold. And that went on for the full 4 hours. So by the second hour, by that point, it was about like 10:30 and it was time for the next dose of medicine. And this is where like maybe you can follow if this ever happens to you. I'm really hoping it doesn't. But I took the pain medicine, and it was one that you had to have with food, so I had it with a snack, and I took it, I ate something, and I went and lied down, which was not good, because literally within a minute I sat up and projectile vomited all in front of the couch on our floor. And poor Tyler got a crash course in being a dad to like maybe sick kids, because I'm having all the bodily fluids basically, and this bless his heart, this man was there to like support me. But gave myself a break, got some water, took the medication again, and like sat up for half an hour and ate something again. But what did happen through this experience is I am very much spiritual in our women's health and our cycle work, and I do bring a lot of that spirituality into Balanced Bombshells and our work together. And one of the books I had read about women's health, and it was actually about delivery and pregnancy, was how the mom can, while she's delivering, talk to the baby and let them know like everything's going to be okay. You kind of write out the contraction waves, and it was just such a beautiful thing of understanding pregnancy. And I felt like this gave me kind of a crash course and a mini lesson in what that's going to be like. So I'm grateful for that. And when I started noticing was I felt called to kind of talk to the baby as this process is going through. So I remember just like Tyler was so good. I was able to just like lie my head in his lap while I was having these contractions, and he rubbed my back. He helped me like put the covers on me when I was really cold, or take them off when I was feeling really hot. But I started talking to the baby and just kind of letting go and saying goodbye and just letting them know like, we're here. This sucks. I'm so sorry. And just sorry for going back to that moment. But it felt good to be able to come from it from that perspective and use it as a way to move forward. And so that kind of helped the process and kind of kickstart the grieving process too. So if you ever find yourself in that situation, that definitely helped. As sad as it is, but we do need to acknowledge the reality of the situation and just how can we support ourselves. Like, what would I be like as a mom to be able to, tell your children that? So then we ended up staying up a little bit, and then Tyler goes to bed, like he falls asleep pretty quickly. And I just remember making him stay up because the doctors had told us what to look out for to make sure we didn't hemorrhage, which means like they didn't want you passing too much blood too quickly, which could cause hemorrhaging. And they basically was like, you can't use tampons through all this, guys, like you have to use pads. And I had not used pads since I was like 13. So that was also a new experience, but we're open to it. So I did have to buy some pads and use those to obviously support the bleeding. And they said, like, if you go through 3 of those pads within like 2 hours, you have to go to the hospital because you're hemorrhaging. So I was like really, really nervous of going to bed, because at this point it's about 11 o'clock at night. And so I was really nervous, and I was just like, will you please just wait up with me just for a little bit? I just want to make sure that the bleeding slows down. I want to make sure that we don't go to bed and I basically go to sleep and I'm not understanding how much blood is lost. So we did take it very seriously, and really, bless his heart, he stayed up with me. I started noticing that a lot of the blood flow had slowed down. So I was like, okay, I'm feeling comfortable enough to go to bed. So the next day I woke up and I felt certainly emotionally raw, but I also felt very cleansed. I felt like my body had gotten rid of things that, the baby, the tissue, everything that had been hanging on to that it knows that it shouldn't. And my abs were flat as a board the next day because I had lost so much fluid. Totally understand that. And so the next day it was, Tyler was like, do you want me to stay home? And I was like, no, go to work. I'm feeling okay. And so for the first day I felt okay. I just kind of felt everything. I called my mom. I called Tyler's mom. Those were certainly hard conversations to have, but they were able to look out for me even from afar because we don't live close to our family. And then it was more of over the next 2 weeks that I was emotionally not prepared for what was going to happen. So you hear a lot of stories of women going through postpartum, but when you have a miscarriage, you can also go through a mini bout of that because your hormones are starting to reset. There's a lot going on. I was pregnant for 9 weeks. So I had built up a lot of hormones, and, my body was starting to reset. And after you have a baby, it is something to watch out for, especially from a standpoint of feeling really overwhelmed, feeling a lot of anxiety, feeling a lot of fear, feeling a lot of stress, and like mental anguish is what it felt like. So not only was I in a part of grieving, of getting over the disappointment that this is not happening right now, that this whole experience just happened, I found myself getting very anxious, and I had a hard time sleeping. I would wake up in the middle of the night and just be awake for like 2 hours, and I would try to go to bed, and I would just start crying, and Tyler would be asleep, and I was like, well, I don't want to wake him up, so I'd go out on the couch and just sit and cry for like 2 hours. And I really wanted to share this part because I don't think that many women, especially post miscarriage, know what this is, and there certainly is a lot of grief, but it also is your body starting to reset. You're emotionally and physically cleansing and purging hormones and emotions that no longer serve you. So there is a positivity to it. But I really challenged myself to sit in it, to be with it, even though it was extremely hard. Because what started happening was having like all of these dark corners in my emotions and my brain started showing up. I started noticing I was having a lot of fear-based thoughts of, is this going to happen again? Are we going to be able to get pregnant again? Are we going to be able to become parents? Like literally going down those rabbit holes and asking myself those questions and really coming front and center of those fear-based thoughts. So I did start working through Gabrielle Bernstein's May Cause Miracle book because it really helped me a couple years ago, and I just felt like, this is on your shelf. It's a lot of meditative and journaling practices to work through your fear, to work through your emotions. I actually have it here. Hold on. So this book really helped me, and we did it as a book club with our Balanced Bombshells community, because like I didn't share with them why I was going through it again until now, but it was really helpful to help me pinpoint what my fears were and to recognize and honor what the truth was. Because what I see now, and even while I was going through it, was recognizing everything happens for a reason. We can get pregnant. We were pregnant. My body felt strong and able during that pregnancy, and it's just one of those things that miscarriages happen in 1 in 4 pregnancies, not 1 in 4 women. So no matter how healthy you are, you're not immune to it. The doctor was adamant that it was chromosomal. So something in the way the baby had been developing, my body recognized this is not going to give you what you want, which is a happy and healthy baby. So I really tried to focus on the long-term goal, and that is to have children that are happy and healthy. And if my body can tell early on that that's not going to give you what you want, then yes, like it's not something you want to hang on to. And although that's very sad, of course I'm disappointed, but I also believe in the science of it, and I also find comfort in that. So they were very adamant that nothing was wrong with us, that, we're perfectly healthy, we're fine. But I just wanted to be able to share this miscarriage story with you as well, because I don't think many women talk about it. We feel shame about it. And I certainly went through all of those emotions. It took me 2 months to be able to even get to this point of being able to share it. But I do want to share something with you that has really helped on my post-miscarriage journey, in hopes that it helps you as well. And that is the Buddhist belief in what happens when women miscarry. So I started reading just a lot of articles online, trying to find comfort from wherever I could. And I truly believe that we're so interconnected with the universe that it gives us messages that we need to hear at the most perfect time. And I stumbled upon this article that talked about the Buddhist belief of what happens when women miscarry, and that is you lose the physical form of the baby, but the soul of the baby never leaves you. It goes back to basically wait in line with its parents until another physical form is ready for the spirit to jump back into. And so I just thought that was so unbelievably beautiful. It brought me so much peace. It brought me so much comfort. And I was like, that's a really beautiful thought that I'm going to hang on to right now. And I ended up calling my mom and sharing that with her, because before I was conceived, she had a miscarriage 6 weeks prior. So I was telling her this, and we both just started kind of like crying for a minute, because I was like, it looks like I was always meant to be your daughter. And like, it just felt so nice and comforting to think like, okay, you lose the physical form, but you never lose your baby. That baby is always with you. It's right there waiting for it to jump back into whatever form it needs to. So I just thought that was so beautiful. And I wanted to share that with you because I know this has been a very heavy topic. I know that you might be crying right along with me, But I truly believe that everything happens for a reason. And in the space between, I really recognized that this was an opportunity to cleanse parts of myself that I needed to let go of, to work through emotions that I hadn't been paying attention to clear out relationships that no longer serve me. Just like I teach with our cycles, that before our period, we're supposed to be purging and cleansing and getting rid of things that weigh us down, so that when you have your period, you actually feel really cleansed, and then you're getting rid of a lot more like toxins and blood and stuff that you don't need. It's a very rejuvenating process. So I really tried to look at this situation the same as I would from all of the cycle work that we do and how we are moving through all of that. So I did find comfort in that as well, and just challenging myself, like, what can you do? What can you do to be better? You're being called to serve from a higher level. If you can work through this stuff now, it's going to be easier when the baby's here, because that's going to bring on a whole other set of challenges that you can't see yet, that you don't know yet, and you need to prepare. And just like I said in my Instagram post when I was sharing the story, was some women, like, we all have lessons to learn as we're moving through the different chapters in our lives. And so for some women, when they're starting a family, having the baby quickly and having the baby from the start of when you start trying, and then it's here 9 months, the lessons that woman needs to learn comes through with the baby. But then there are some of us where we need to go on the path alone for a bit to be the most prepared to be able to take on being a parent. And I think that is something we also need to talk about, that there is beauty in the space between, that there is a transition period that many of us may need to go through as we're strengthening our bodies, as we're understanding our fertility, as we're asking for what we need from our partner, as we're letting go of relationships and emotions that no longer serve us. Because when you're a parent, you don't have space for that. You don't have time for that. My children don't need that part of me. They need the best of me. And in order for me to be able to give them that parent, that mother, I needed to go through this to be able to work through that. And so I really am looking at it more as a blessing, not a curse. I'm looking at it as an opportunity to grow and get better. And just how can we use this and use our stories from a place of positivity and growth and connection? Because my story might not be yours. You might identify with some pieces of it, or my story might be your story as well. And just how can we connect with other women too, to just make sure that you know that you're not alone? Because I definitely felt that way. I found myself shutting off from the world, avoiding friends who had children, not really wanting to talk about it, just really isolating myself, which didn't feel good. And I really believe even in our own health and in our cycle of having happy periods, of getting rid of PMS, like all these symptoms that can kind of hold us back, the underlying connection is always to open ourselves up to receiving love and to connection. And so that's what I really challenge myself to do. And what I'm doing right now is trying to receive love and support as much as I want to give that to you through this story. I hope I also get receive that from you as well, whether you share this video with a friend, whether you watch this and talk about it with your friends, or just, opening the doors of having these raw, honest, and real communications. Because I haven't really gotten on here, I think, and shared so vulnerable wise. I'm not one to really cry on camera. I know we're more one to want to hide that, but it's the real deal and the real situation of what's been going on in my life. And I know there's a lot of women in our community who have been asking for fertility services. So I have been studying fertility for the past year. The fertility plan I put myself on worked like a charm, and I'm going to be doing another video to kind of talk about what that looked like, how everything kind of came about, and how I knew we were pregnant before we got a test. I'm excited to share at least, that side of it as well. So I'm going to be doing a series of these videos to help you on your journey too, because I know, there's just so many questions that we have, and there's so much conflicting information out there. There's so much confusing information out there, and how do you make it work for you? And there's just a mountain of stuff out there. And so I've been combing through it for the past year and really trying to find a system as well, where not only it worked for me, but I can help you find what you need on your journey as well. And so I think that is something that we also need to understand too, that I have felt very guided in my work. I have felt pushed into it in so many circumstances. And if anything that can come out of this is certainly peace for myself, and being able to have this talk therapy. I'm going to be doing a lot more writing on my blog about all of this stuff too, because I find comfort in it, and I find it as as healing, but hopefully opening the door where you can be sharing this information with your friends. You can use this to move along in your journey and not feel ashamed and not feel alone, and know that we do need to sit in these uncomfortable emotions. As much as we want to feel joy and happiness and excitement, it also comes with periods of sadness and grief and loss, and that is, you don't get one without the other. And I think in our social media, in our, let's show our best life moments, we do need to understand that our life is filled with both sides. And so right now I'm in that season of transition. I'm in that grief, I'm in that sadness, I'm in that loss part, but I'm also making sure that I'm finding, what is the point of this? How can I use this pain from a place of purpose? How can I help other women through this who might really need that support? And maybe I went through it just to be able to help out one other woman. And you know what, okay, it totally sucks, but I'm just really thinking long term and just trying to attack the fear-based thoughts that come up, because we think oh, it hasn't happened yet, which we then believe that it won't. And I really have tried to work through, that's not the truth, because the truth is that what I know right now is I can get pregnant. The fertility plan I put myself on worked like a charm. All of the things that I shifted with my own health, the things that I had my husband do to shift and support his fertility, I find so much comfort in science and facts. And so fertility wise, just so you guys know, 60% the woman, 40% the man. It is a two-way partnership. It is not on just the women's shoulders, which I think most of us feel. So just as I made adjustments in my life, I absolutely made sure that my husband did as well. So I want to be able to help you. I want to be able to help your partner be able to come and understand your fertility from a place of empowerment and not from a place of, I'm confused, I don't know what to do. I totally understand. And at least I can use my background in women's health and, just even understanding my own fertility in the past year and being able to test out a lot of things, research a lot of things. But I really thank you for joining me today on hearing this story. I know, it can be hard to listen to, but I hope it brought some peace. I hope that I, gave you the real deal and what was going on, because I honestly wish that I had known. I think I would have, I like to obviously gather a lot of information. It makes me feel more supported and prepared. But definitely put your comments below and subscribe to this channel if you have been loving this. If you have a story you want to share, email me at laura@balancebombshells.com. I will leave my email below. I'd love to hear from you. I've had so many women since sharing this story share their own stories. They're trying to conceive stories, their success stories of having miscarriage and now having children, or having children and then having a miscarriage and then having children. So, again, I'm going to restate the stat that 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in miscarriage. It's not 1 in 4 women. So it's actually pretty likely that most women, especially if you're going to be having multiple children, will experience at least 1 miscarriage in your trying to conceive journeys. So I do find comfort in knowing this happens often. It's not happy or exciting, I get that, but just knowing that there's comfort in other women understand you, they understand where you're coming from. So many women have gone through this, and I've opened up with women from so many different age groups, and many of them, especially those that are older than me, will lean forward, touch my shoulder, and just say, I had one too. My mom had one, my sisters had one. It's part of our life. And I think if we can not necessarily normalize it, but just get comfortable talking about something that most people shy away from, most people don't know how to talk about, most people don't want to talk about it. But for those who are going through it, we need to talk about it. We need to celebrate where we're at. And for me, I want to celebrate the little wins and help whoever I can along their journey as well. So thank you so much for joining me for this video, and I will link a few more below on my fertility journey so far, and answering your questions about miscarriage and fertility as well.